This week, a tiny team called Sheriff was drawn in a Champions League group alongside Real Madrid, Inter Milan and Shakhtar Donetsk. Who the hell is Sheriff? Well, according to the media, they're Moldova's first soccer club to make the Champions League, which is true, but, well, it's also not true. You see, Sheriff are the team of Tiraspol, a weird little Soviet-looking city in Transnistria, a slither of land between Moldova and Ukraine that's technically Moldova, but really it's its own state, with its own money, its own passport and its own very weird politics. De facto separated from Moldova since the 1990 to 1992 war, its people mostly speak Russian, not Romanian, and their tiny economy, about $1 billion, is propped up by Kremlin gas subsidies and 40,000 tons of weaponry the Russians accidentally left behind in '92. Nobody recognises Transnistria's independence, and it's barely a blip on the map between Chisinau, the Moldovan capital, and Odessa in Ukraine, about 24 miles wide. Transnistria has its own government, and they meet at a Soviet bloc that's got a statue of Lenin outside it still, next to trams that haven't changed since the 60s. But the place is really run by an elusive tycoon called Viktor Husan, who owns a mafia-like company called, yep, you guessed it, Sheriff. And Sheriff, which is about as far from a lawman as you can get, runs everything in Transnistria. Supermarkets, banks, gas stations, cell phone networks, gyms, television channels, construction firms, a cognac whose foul taste I can vouch for firsthand, and the local soccer club, which Husan pumps money into and wipes the floor with pretty much everyone in Moldova's tiny national league. When I went there in 2014, me and my fixer took a marshrutka, that's like a public minivan, across the border from Chisinau to Tiraspol, and it was basically like going back in time. Old babushkas selling bras on the street, tanks and planes as war memorials, larders and gas vans. It's like a USSR theme park, except for Sheriff's $200 million stadium just outside town. Then, when we got across the Transnistrian border, our driver hopped out and unloaded thousands of boxes of cigarettes onto a pal's trunk. Most folks still call Transnistria a smuggler's paradise. Its own black market is how Husan is thought to have made his first million, alongside booze and food from Odessa. Everything was Sheriff. You had eyes on you 24/7. You had to be careful, says Anthony Golek, an Aussie player who moved to the club in 2016. He says Husan showed up to training with 3 or 4 Humvees and a fleet of bodyguards. Players took their weekly pay from Husan in person, flanked by machine gun wielding guards. They know who the boss was. Golek added, "You got the idea you couldn't mess with a guy like that." And he's right. He was soon sold to Persepolis, a team in Iran, which is pretty shady in its own right. Smuggling has died down a touch since 2014, when, after Russia's Green Men walked into Crimea, Moldova set about trying to strangle the want-away state on its own border. European and Ukrainian anti-crime campaigns have tried to cut off the supply of bootleg and stolen goods coming through the region. But it's still going on. I mean, who's going to end it after all? So when you see Luka Modric, or Gareth Bale, or Christian Eriksen banging them in at the Sheriff Stadium this season, bear in mind that the so-called country around them, as one Russian sports writer coined it, is, quote, one big mafia organisation. Now, how's that for an Underworld sports crossover?